So what is the Wizard of Oz? You have Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. So the Cowardly Lion has no courage, the Tin Man has no heart, and the Scarecrow has no brains. And then you have Dorothy in her ruby slippers. Now, before we get started, you have to understand that when, what's his name, Frank Baum, his name Baum, he wrote it in the late 1800s. And the best way to understand the motivation of deception is what do they change about it? You know, what changes about the story? What do they leave out? In the original book of The Wizard of Oz, the slippers were not ruby red. They were, can anyone guess? I'm going to check I'll check the chat. You may be able to guess if you just understand that this is about economics. I'm just seeing if anyone get red shoes meaning in Hollywood. We'll get to that. We'll get to all of it. Her slippers were silver. Nice. Now, they weren't green. They were silver. The entire story is about money, because that was when the Small Hats and the Rockefellers and some other nefarious groups. It's not all Small Hats, by the way. The Wicked Witch of the East represented Rockefellers. Wicked Witch of the West represented J.P. Morgan and the Rothschilds. But, you know, Small Hats are always involved, obviously. But so they were silver slippers on a golden path, right? Because that was when we were going towards fiat currency. And it's not, here's the thing about currency. And I've thought a lot about this before saying what I believe. It's not that it's fiat. It's not that it's government issued. It's that there's the parasitic vampire bank is the problem. The U.S. government isn't allowed to issue us money. When we say our money is backed only by the U.S. government and not by gold, that isn't true. It's not backed by the U.S. It's the U.S. government. You're not even going to believe this stuff. You're going to think it sounds so crazy you won't believe it. But just if you look into it, what I'm saying is absolutely true. Just trust me or look it up. If you don't trust me, just look it up. The U.S. government can't issue money. Only the Federal Reserve can, which has no relation whatsoever to the elected U.S. government. Okay? And the money is printed out of nothing. It's just zeros. They can just make money and there's nothing backing it. And the U.S. government can't tell them what to print or who to give it to or what to do. That's reality. And that is why our money is so unstable and so crooked. And so what happens is the Federal Reserve, we are slaves, guys. When you understand it, don't go despair, but just understand it. The Federal Reserve prints money that they just make out of thin air. And then the government takes it and then owes it to the Federal Reserve. Where does the federal government get the money? Us, our labor. So our labor goes to the government in the form of taxes, which then goes to the Federal Reserve, who prints fake money. So the Federal Reserve literally owns us as slaves. And during the late 1800s, this was really, really working itself out. It was existing then just like it exists now, but people were close enough to free-range freedom that they once had, where the government wasn't in their business extracting, because the bankers were on the government extracting. So you had Williams Jennings Bryant, who proposed a silver standard. You know, the best monetary system, from the way I see it, as a non-economist, I get it, is money issued directly from the government based on labor. That's why the Good Witch is from the South, because the South was the area that most of their currency was based on direct labor. You have to understand, thinking that World War II is about the Holocaust or the Civil War is about slavery is so naive. And I understand you've been brainwashed your whole life, but it makes absolutely no sense when you think about it. The American South, their economy was based on human labor, which is the most honest and direct. And so the East was the Tin Man. Let's talk about this. So what is the Tin Man? The Tin Man is the industrial East. It requires oil to function, and it doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have morality. you know, and then you find out later it had morality the whole time, but the Tin Man appears to have no morality, and it needs oil to function. What does the straw man represent? What does the scarecrow represent? Represents the farmer with no brain. Although you realize as the movie goes on, the straw man is the only one with the morality to avoid the poppy fields, the heroin, and is usually right about everything. But he feels he isn't smart because he's been told that he doesn't have a brain. He's had a brain the whole time. And then the cowardly lion represents the corrupt politician, Williams Jennings Bryan. So it's the lion, the king, who's a coward. The industrial, amoral East that requires oil, and the farmer that is treated like an idiot but is always right. And then you have Dorothy, which represents the everyman, the every person, right? And this is so enlightening. Oh, guys, it gets tax ID number 10. Back then, it wasn't. I understand that there's a lot of more knowledge that emerges from art. This was written in the late 1800s, so you have to keep that in mind. A lot of this symbolism is very old and obvious. And later, if things emerge and stuff like that, that's one thing. But I'll show you what I know to be true. And then if you want to take things from it, your own thing, that's all you. But this is what it is. So the Tin Man requires oil to function, has no morality. The straw man has no brains, and always doubts himself because he doesn't have that education. And then the lion, who is the king, the leader, is a coward. And then you have Dorothy just trying to get home. And she doesn't really have red slippers. That's the big trick. Silver slippers in the book. And Hollywood does this over and over and over again. They'll take something true and they'll change the most important thing so that we love the movie and we resonate with the truth of the movie, but we never really see what it was about. If she had silver slippers, you would know immediately what this was about. And so the reason Hollywood will wear red shoes will just show they're in the club of deception. Like, I'm in, we're wearing red shoes. And that can mean, maybe it's evolved to mean that they're a pedophile. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But the ruby slippers is basically like letting everyone know I'm your guy for the lie. Because if Dorothy was wearing the original silver slippers, this would be obvious what it was about. Okay, so now the witch dies from the housing crash. I'll just leave that at that. The witch, which represents the banksters, gets crushed by a home. All right, that's obvious symbolism. We don't need to stick with that. The good witch is labor of the South, the American South. And so as they go, you have the monkeys. What do the monkeys represent? They represent the NPCs, the trolls, the servants of the system. And you could see that, no offense to, law enforcement and stuff, but a lot of times, don't take offense that a lot of law enforcement or FBI or NSA is represented by literal shrieking flying monkeys. Bear in mind, my character is represented by a young girl. So let's all just not take offense to anything. So they're serving the banks, and they're just these ridiculous little monkeys flying and shrieking. And you see that they serve the banks because this is one of the little servants, just a tiny little Rogan, kneeling before JP Morgan. Okay, so what do we have here? And obviously the yellow brick road is gold, ruby slippers, right. So the gatekeeper is the Jordan Peterson, the Ben Shapiro, all this stuff. This is all about media. Once they get to Oz, the Emerald City, the greenback, you have the media gatekeeper. It's a literal gatekeeper, guys. And so they're trying to get in, and he determines whether or not you can go in or not go in. That is the media gatekeepers, the approved. That's why our channel is called unauthorized.tv, because that is to determine authorized or non-authorized. Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, Ben Shapiro, all these people, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, that's the gatekeeper, right? And so this is when things, and to get there, bear in mind, opium represents, obviously, opioids. It's not even, guys, the symbolism is right there. You don't even have to do acronyms or flip it or anything. Opium, it's poppy fields. And so on the way, there's the distraction of alcohol, opium, pornography, whatever the opiate is to not see properly. And so who falls the most victim to the opium? It's the humans. You know, it's the Cowardly Lion and Dorothy. Who doesn't? The Tin Man, the amoral industrial, because he represents more of like the corporate entities, and the Straw Man because of the farm morality. Farmers have a very, very high sense of food and herbs and day and night and animals, and they're not as trickable into becoming opium addicts. And so the Straw Man and the Tin Man desperately pull Dorothy and the Cowardly Lion out of the opiates. And guys, this is written in the late 1800s. There's nothing new under the sun. That's a poppy field. And the poppy field, of course, is why we're still in Afghanistan. It's to get opium. It's to get poppies. It's literally the opiate of the people is not religion. It's literally opium. So the biggest drug dealers in America are Rite Aid, Walgreens, all that stuff. The CIA, George Bush, Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden. These dudes are massive, massive corner. You know, just picture a dope dealer on the corner. Now give them aircraft carriers. That's what that is. And so to keep people in a malaise, you have unlimited pornography. You have easily accessed opioids to people that don't have chronic pain or require it in any way. You have media. You have a way to just always stay like this and not open your eyes. Okay, so then what happens? And then I'll open some mail and stuff. So you find Oz. Hang on, let me find you Oz. Here it is. There it is. So what is Oz? So Oz, the great Oz, the king banker, the Emerald City, the greenback, is the spectacle. And if there was silver shoes, you would have seen it the first time you saw this movie. Because Ruby makes no sense. It's a curveball. So you have the big fireballs. You have the movie screen. You have an image projected of this great Oz. This is Satan, right? This is the great Satan. Satan is a trickster, a deceiver, and an illusionist. That face isn't really Oz. That's your fear. That's your assumptions. That's your envy, your wants, your lust, your sloth, all the sins. Boom, 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 boom. Right there. You put it right on that screen, and that gives it control. So what happens? The dog, and this is the one time I'll do like a word thing, seeing symbolism, maybe when it's not there, but dog backwards is God, right? So everything under God's providence, God will do a miracle and show you what's real. And God, which is the dog, and I'm not saying that God is a dog. So you have this dog. I'm going to kill your little dog too. I'm going to kill God too. No. Somehow, through all of this, the little dog doesn't die. Miraculously, you have flying monkeys, you have witches, you have opium, you have fires, and the dog is right there. It's God. So what does God do? God's there the whole time, and you don't really even think about God until God just does one little thing. Just opens the curtain. Just opens the curtain and shows you who Oz really is. The reveal. God reveals, right? And you don't see it. You know, sometimes I heard this great phrase once. It helped me get back to Christ. Sometimes to see God, some people don't see God because they don't look low enough. I see that every day. Where you see God every day. That's why I don't like the high and mighty Christians. Like, you're not a real Christian unless you can quote every single line of Matthew. And I'm like, you're a trickster. God revealed Oz. You've watched this movie so many times, and you probably never even thought of the role of Toto, right? Toto survives everything. And why is the witch, I'll get your little dog too? Why does the witch care about the dog? The witch wants to remove faith because the witch on some, and faith cannot, God cannot be hurt. That's a tiny dog survived flying monkeys. Why? Because when it really matters, just open the curtain. And what do you see? You see Oz is just a little Jew behind a curtain. Right? And so that's all it is. And that pretty much is what I want to explain. There's so much more in the movie and there's so much more symbolism and all that. But the main thing is you have Dorothy, the innocent every man, every woman in America. And she has faith. She has God, which represents her dog. If you think that's a stretch, guys, Jiminy Cricket is Jesus Christ. It's Pinocchio's morality, you know? And so Dorothy's morality is in the form of her dog. This is just how stories can be told with symbolism, right? So, you know, you never think of a little cricket. You never think of a little dog. You never think of God being everywhere. And everything is under God's province. You have the great and mighty Oz, the big city, the towering greenback, you know, the gatekeepers and flying monkeys and witches, you know, all of it. And all it is just a little dog pulls back a curtain and all is revealed. And you just see it's a little scared man. A little scared man. A little Jesuit, a little Jew, a little Rockefeller. Doesn't matter. I go with the Jews a lot because it's taboo and people can get fired for saying it. And so because of my freedom, my obligation is to say what other people can't say. So I like to really go hard at the Jews because they're involved in some really bad shit. And there's been a lot of laws in the world where you're not allowed to criticize Jews because they're in control of the governments. That being said, the Jews are not the root of evil. They're just very easily corruptible because they have no logos. So one reason I comedically go at the Jews so hard is because I can. But don't think that that little Oz just represents Jews. It represents the Rockefellers. It represents the Carnegies. It represents the Morgans. It represents, you know, the corrupt cardinals and popes. And so, and the Jews. And the fact that there's been such psyops and such media and educational madness and banking madness to make it so that Jews is the word that is not spoken. It's given them unbelievable power. And that ends because the easiest way to remove unnatural, non-God-given strength or force or power is just by speaking the truth. So that's it. Oz is ounces of gold. Brilliant. Exactly. OZ, the Wizard of Ounce. And so that's why the gold-backed dollar isn't even much better, because the banksters own all the gold. The best move is labor. The witch of the South was the good witch because it was based on labor. Labor and currency issued through your direct government or king is always in history gives the most prosperity to the people. Banksters on any level, whether it's through, that's why silver was so devastating for the banksters, because they didn't own all the silver, they owned the gold. And so they still own the gold. And so that's why as much as I love, what's that dude's name? The Christian doctor, Ron Paul, and I think his message is very peaceful and very good. He's one step. He's just saying, okay, instead of fiat, we call it fiat, we'll gold back it. Okay, great. Who has all the gold? The Rothschilds own. The Rothschilds controlled all the gold for hundreds of years and through the city of London. And who else has all the gold? China. You know, you might have a couple gold nuggets, but that doesn't shift the power. What shifted the power was silver, and that's why the silver shoes. Silver can also be a fix now. You have to understand, the one thing you can't fix is trust, faith, and labor. You can't fix that. You can't own trust, faith, and labor. You can't own a man's will, which is what the good witch of the South represented. Every commodity can be fixed. But at the time, silver wasn't as controlled by the banksters. Now, it's more controlled. the amount of control. So the most control is fiat currency. They can literally print it in a private bank and force the U.S. government to take it from our labor. I've accepted that. I pay my taxes, give Caesar Caesar's. We're all slaves, but we're free when we admit it and we love God, right? Bitcoin, yeah, okay. It's fine. No. You can, if you want to believe it's Bitcoin, that's fine. I think there's a really good chance Bitcoin is in fact the mark of the beast, but I can't prove that. Just a hunch. Something that requires the hum of a never-ending electronic and internet grid to give you value. No, value comes from family, soil, faith, God, gratitude towards God, labor, sweat, courage, brains. If I only had a brain, you find out the farmer was right. The ruthlessness would be the most profitable thing. Turns out it isn't. Ruthlessness and amoral business is one of the worst things you can do in business, because the greatest thing you can have is trust. That's why there's 4,000 people here, guys. Morality is infinitely more valuable than the will to do harm, the will to subjugate, force. When you have people that aren't super terrified by death and love their family and honor God and know that the purpose of life is to serve God, there's nothing more valuable than that. You can't get that in a coin or a fiat square. Bitcoin will be the future. I hope not, buddy. I hope you don't keep saying those spells and putting that into reality, because that's witchcraft. Bitcoin is the future. Bitcoin is the future. Bitcoin is not the future. It could be if you guys keep trying to whisper in these horrors. Someone's like, hey, Big Bear, you were wrong about Bitcoin. It just went up to 13K. Guys, it's the fundamentals of it. What gives Bitcoin value? An electronic grid and an internet and faith. It has faith in something that isn't God. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar to you guys? That's the Federal Reserve 01011001010101. If you think that has value, you're in a fractal eternal hell. Bitcoin dropped to 10K today. It doesn't matter. People are like, talk about the Democratic debates. Doesn't matter. Why would I waste my time on that? Why would I waste my time seeing what Bitcoin does? There's no value there. Whether or not one presidential candidate says Spanish in the beginning of his speech or in the middle, and then, Elizabeth Warren didn't bring up race once. Guys, it's all a time drain. It's all a distraction. There's no God there. God is not there. God has left the building with that. Who's your master? Is it the grid? Right. Is it internet? Is it fake people saying fake things? No, of course not. Bitcoin is cool ASF. I think a lot of you guys are actually trolls. I made 2K this week using Bitcoin. Okay, let me reveal something to you guys. If you think of Bitcoin as how much it's worth in dollars, it's simply one more rabbit hole down the rabbit hole. So if you think of Bitcoin as how much it's worth in dollars, you've already submitted to the fact Bitcoin has no value. You realize that, right? I made $2,000 in the new currency. What is the new currency? Nothing. What value? Nothing. It's fractal hell. So you have gold, then to greenbacks, and now to Bitcoin. You think that's getting out? You think that's getting to God? No, that's digging. So now you think of Bitcoin in terms of dollars, and you think of dollars in terms of gold. Where's God? Not there. Well, I made $2,000 with my Bitcoin. How much is that? Well, that's 90 ounces of gold. Well, how much is that in silver? Guys, value is labor, faith, family. Markets determine value, not ideology. Currently over 10,000. Keep telling yourself that. Keep telling yourself that the markets aren't rigged. Guys, money is all an illusion. Do you not know how the Federal Reserve works? When you go in to get a mortgage, you don't get it from the government. You get it from the Federal Reserve. How does the Federal Reserve create money and value? It does this into a computer. And there it is. That's called the, the alchemist stone, the sorcerer's The alchemist stone, it's creating gold out of nothing. It's all a lie. And when it crashes, it will be horror. Bitcoin is the mark of the beast, because you will have to have something on your arm or your head that just goes, how much Bitcoin do you have? Deet, deet. There's no value there. You've now entered eternal slavery. And people, guys, people have begged me to let them give me Bitcoin. I don't let them give me Bitcoin. What does that tell you? I'm not wealthy, guys. I don't have a trust fund. I have a mortgage. I've been kicked off everywhere where I can make money. I refuse to take free Bitcoin. I'm very intelligent and you trust me. What does that say? What does that say? Maybe it doesn't have any real value. Now, if I was put to in a position where I had to take Bitcoin to pay my bills and blah, 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 not mark of the beast stuff, but maybe. I'm not going to say but it's worse than money. Like, I currently use money with no value to give Caesar Caesars and operate in this world. And if I had to use Bitcoin, I would, but I'm not going to enter another world. It's like MySpace to Facebook to Snapchat. Guys, these are rabbit hole to rabbit hole to rabbit hole. Don't think that Bitcoin is your way out. It's your way deeper into it, because it's even less of a connection to what is real. Oh, it's decentralized. Guys, you can't be that naive. You can't be that naive. You can't even explain what it is. Well, it's, there's no centralization. It's all these computers mining. So you're talking about AI, and you think there's value in AI, and you want like a family, and Bitcoin isn't Jew ran. That's why it's very important that you understand that the devil isn't a Jew. The Jews are easily susceptible to Satan because they don't have logos. They killed logos, and they've been in a never-ending guilt spiral where I'm just trying to masturbate on a bus. They're not the devil. So if you base your life on avoiding Jews, guys, there's more circles here. There's more onions to unpeel. Owen has become one of the realest dudes ever, dropping knowledge. Well, I mean, do what you want. I'm not here. I don't force you to do anything. Nothing. I give you advice based on my life experience and my talents, which is algorithms. I'm now realizing how much I instinctively know about economics. It's kind of mind-blowing. Once you start seeing it, once you start seeing the patterns, just like I would see patterns in men and women and do comedy on it, the same skill I have with patterns of music, patterns of human behavior turned into jokes, patterns of economics. Guys, trust is the most valuable thing in economics. Trust. Brand loyalty. Why on earth are people operating the way that they are if they think that they're trying to become more valuable? No one trusts a brand anymore because they know they've sacrificed reality and truth for something else. And that's why I have more viewers than MSNBC, even though I'm one of the most banned human beings on the internet. All right. Buy a quarter Bitcoin in 5 years, buy your house debt free. That is the sound of a mark. That is the sound of someone who wants to get into a bond. Do you think if that was real, you would know that? Think. Do you think if this really the way it is, the way that these things work is the pump up and then the bail. The billionaires get all you as marks. The power hungry get all you as little marks to jump in, right? Hey, guys, if we go to California, we get the gold. Go to California to get the gold. Go to California to get the gold. Guys, the gold's already gone. It's all good, though. I'm not mad at you. Just please think. I genuinely care about a lot of you. And I'm not telling you not to. If you want to buy Bitcoin, go ahead. But know what it is. It's another removal of value away from the dollar. And it's even worse. Guys, government-issued fiat money is better than anything like this. Because at least the government is real. If you're talking about AI, and you're talking about something that you don't understand at all, gold is more valuable than the dollar. The most valuable is labor, faith, family, love. Guys, I'm not a hippie. I'm a fucking weasel-killing maniac. Do you think that I would tell you that one of the most valuable things in the world is love if it wasn't? I sound like a fag. Trust, faith, shared faith. You know how bad multiculturalism, right, is, right? Like how diversity is our strength. That's like saying a ping pong player, female gymnast, and a karate champion would make a better offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys because at least they're not all football players. That's absurd. The unity of love and faith and family is so valuable that most of the evil in this world is aimed all the time at breaking it. All the world's not a stage. Robbie Davison from the Flat Earth Conference is a huge Bitcoin proponent. You should sit down and discourse with him when you're in Dallas. I will. I don't think these people are evil. I think they're dupes. And I honestly don't really care enough. I don't want to sit down and endlessly talk about things that I've done it. Do you know how many people have been like, Big Bear, I got to explain to you about Bitcoin. Then I'll give you Bitcoin. And I'm like, okay. And then an hour later, I'm like, so what is it? And they're like, well, Big Bear, first you get your coin purse, and then you get your another ID number, another TIN. You got to be kidding me, right? A barcode? Where are you going to put it on your forehead or your left arm? No, Big Bear, you're missing the point, Big Bear. The Jews don't have any... Guys, the Jews aren't the root of evil. They're just a high-level servant because they killed Logos. If you think that just getting away from the Jews is going to keep you away from the beast, that's probably the beast's plan. That's why actual Jew hatred, not the type, not calling out the small hats and the war and the sodomy, actual Jew hatred is a weakness. It won't allow you to see what is good and evil and what is best for you in the future. The beasts control the grid and the internet, so they own Bitcoin. Exactly. It's like people can't see right in front of them. It's unregulated, Big Bear. All you need is the electrical grid and the internet. What on earth are you talking about? Who owns the internet? Who owns the grid? Coming from a guy who's been kicked off of a lot of the internet to the point where I had to think, like, I'm almost kicked off the grid. Guys, I'm one of those guys that would be kicked out of banks. Okay, so trust me that banks are owned. Highways are owned. You don't own this shit. That's why you pay. That's why I pay my taxes. And people think I'm crazy for that. They're like, you've seen the light. How do you pay that? It's like, I don't own this. I'm renting. You know, in the world, not of the world. You know, this isn't our world. If you're a Christian, this isn't our world. If it's on the internet, it's owned. Where's my super chat function? It's a P.O. box, guys, because they own the super chat function. Bitcoin is also all public. Do you know what the word public means? Like, what does public mean to you? What does that mean? Public. Oh, it's public. Public, like Twitter? What are you talking about? It's fractal hell. It just goes forever. Well, I mean, Twitter, it's for everyone. Anyone can sign up for a Twitter account. Well, I got kicked off Twitter. Well, at least you have the internet's public. I just got kicked off the internet. My domain is no longer accessible to me. Well, I mean, listen, at least you're in the country. You have your Chase bank account. Well, I no longer can go to Chase because of my political views. Well, at least you can go to a public pool. No, I was just arrested by a flying monkey. Joe Rogan loves Bitcoin is all I have to say.